It was just past midnight when I first heard it, the sound of a child crying from the basement. At first, I told myself it was the house settling, or maybe the pipes. But the longer I stood there, the clearer it became. Soft, broken sobs rising from beneath the floorboards. I froze at the top of the stairs, my heart pounding in my ears. The moment I whispered my wife's name, the crying stopped. Jenna and I had just moved into that house 3 weeks earlier. It was an old Victorian on the edge of a quiet little town, the kind of place where every window seemed to lean with age and every floorboard carried a story. We bought it cheap, too cheap if I'm honest. The realtor called it charming with character, which I later learned was code for falling apart in the wrong places. Still, we were excited. New jobs, a new start, and a house big enough to finally call our own. During the day, the house almost felt welcoming. Sunlight pouring through stained glass windows, the smell of fresh paint covering the musty odor of wood that had seen 100 winters. But at night, it was different. The air turned heavy, the hallways colder. Sometimes Jenna would mention hearing creaks in the walls or what sounded like footsteps in the attic. I laughed it off, told her it was just the quirks of an old house. But deep down, I knew she wasn't wrong. There was a weight to that place, something you could feel pressing against your skin when the lights went out. And then came that first night, that first cry. The second night, I heard it again. Midnight, almost exactly the same time. This time I was in bed, lying awake beside Jenna. She was already asleep, her breathing steady, calm. I stared at the ceiling, waiting, straining my ears for something I wished I wouldn't hear. And then it came. A faint, muffled sob. Just a single cry at first, like a child trying to hold back tears. It drifted up through the floorboards, slow and deliberate, as though the house itself was weeping. I froze at the top of the stairs, my heart hammering in my ears. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't even want to admit it was real. So I told myself again, pipes, the wind, the storm outside, anything but what it sounded like. But then came the second sound, a tiny scrape, like something shifting against concrete. Then a hollow tap, repeating once, twice, 3 times. It wasn't the pipes. It wasn't the storm. It was down there, waiting. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, every board under my feet betraying me with a groan. The hallway was colder than it should have been, the kind of cold that doesn't belong in a house. I could see my breath fogging in the dark. I stopped at the top of the stairs, gripping the rail so hard my knuckles ached. The crying grew sharper, clearer, a child's voice trembling, almost pleading as if to beg to be found. But each time I leaned forward, each time I held my breath to listen, the sound would vanish. Silence. And then, out of nowhere, a soft thud. My blood ran cold. It had come from the basement door. I took a step back. The air was heavy, pressing against my chest like the house itself wanted me to stay away. But I couldn't. I needed to know. I reached for the doorknob, my hand shaking, sweat mixing with the icy chill. The crying returned, louder now, echoing against the walls, bouncing between the floor and the ceiling, as if the whole house was filled with it. I froze again, staring at the door. The knob twitched, just slightly, just enough to let me know whatever was down there knew I was listening. I didn't open it, not that night. Instead, I backed away, step by careful step, until I was back in bed beside Jenna. I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, listening to the sound of a child weeping beneath my house. By the third night, I wasn't sure if I was imagining things anymore or if the house wanted me to hear it. Midnight came, and with it the crying, louder than ever, echoing through every corner of the house. Jenna was asleep upstairs, but the sound seemed to bypass the walls, drilling straight into me. I stood at the basement door, hand trembling on the knob. I told myself I would just open it, just look, prove it was nothing. But the moment my skin touched the cold brass, the crying stopped. Silence. A silence so heavy it roared in my ears. And then a single giggle, high-pitched, childlike, right on the other side of the door. My heart seized. Every instinct screamed to run, but I forced myself to push the door open. The hinges shrieked, a sound too loud, too sharp in the midnight air. I clicked on the wall switch. Nothing. So I grabbed the flashlight from the shelf, and its beam carved a narrow tunnel through the shadows. That's when I saw them. Toys. Old, cracked dolls and wooden blocks scattered across the basement floor as if a child had been playing there only minutes ago. Their glassy eyes reflected the light back at me, too alive, too aware. And on the far wall, stains. Dark, jagged stains streaking down the concrete like something had been dragged across it. My breath hitched. The crying started again, not from below this time, but from the corner of the room. The beam of my flashlight shook as I turned. A small figure crouched there, facing the wall. Its shoulders trembled with each sob. "Hello?" My voice cracked as I whispered. Are you okay?" The sobbing stopped. Slowly, impossibly slow, the figure began to turn its head. The body didn't move, only the head, twisting far beyond what was natural, until I saw its face. But it wasn't a child. The mouth stretched too wide, the eyes too hollow, like a mask that had forgotten how to be human. And then it smiled. I staggered back, my flashlight clattering against the steps, the beam whipping across the walls as the figure's smile stretched wider. I wanted to scream for Jenna, but the sound died in my throat. My legs barely obeyed me as I scrambled up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut with every ounce of strength I had. The house shook with the force, and for a moment, silence. Then came the pounding, fists, small but furious, hammering the other side of the door. The cries rose to shrieks, jagged and unnatural, filling the house until it felt like the walls themselves were screaming. I pressed my back against the door, holding it shut, praying it would hold. The pounding stopped as suddenly as it began, and then nothing. For hours I sat there in the dark, flashlight dead, too afraid to move. When the first light of dawn finally bled through the windows, I opened the door just a crack. The basement was empty. No toys, no stains, just bare concrete walls and dust. Jenna never believed me when I told her. She laughed, said it was stress from the move, or maybe I'd fallen asleep on the couch. But every night since then, I've heard it. The crying, always at midnight. Sometimes it's faint, far away, like it's buried deep in the earth. And sometimes it's closer, right outside our bedroom door. I never go down there anymore. But I know one night I won't have a choice, because whatever's in that basement, it's waiting for me.